The way I see it, we have 3 built-in challenges as a volunteer department. You typically don't have in a full-time department, especially being that we are rural. We have 3 primary challenges. The reason I want to cover these things is because in the last class that Jacob did an incredible job on with nozzle tactics and handling hoses and how to spray water, he did a wonderful job with that. A lot of those practices and techniques have water conservation in mind, and that's important. The 3 challenges that we have, the things that work against us: time, manpower, and water supply. Would you agree, Chief?
Oh, yeah.
These are our 3 primary challenges that set us apart as a rural volunteer fire department. Now, that being said, yes, we have the benefit of mutual aid, but if we can clean up our own house before we call in the maids, that's great too. The more that we can do and the more proficient and efficient we can be on scene before our mutual aid partners come into play, the better for all of us, right? So everything that we try to do, from how we load hoses, to how we pack gear, to how we load the trucks, to how we deploy hoses on scene, to how we use water, every tactic is keeping these 3 things in mind. The reason I'm going over these 3 things is to help y'all understand exactly the precision that should take place on a fire scene, keeping all 3 of these challenges in mind. Water supply and manpower being 2 of our biggest issues, right? So there's a little very basic math that we can utilize to know how much water we need to flow, and also how to best utilize tanker tactics, how to utilize if we need to set up draft tanks, all this other stuff which you guys will learn about in your 64. But so common house around here, let's say that sucker's 50 by 30, right? We all agree that that's 1,500 square feet, right? If you take 1,500 square feet, divide it by 3, that will give you 500 gallons per minute. If that house is 100% involved, we need to flow about 500 gallons per minute on that structure to efficiently and effectively extinguish the fire, okay? If it's a 2-story house, you double it and it becomes 1,000 gallons per minute. If we get there and we realize that, okay, the house is only 50% involved and it's a 1-story, if the house is 50% involved, we don't need to flow 500 gallons a minute. We should flow 250 gallons per minute to effectively and efficiently put out that fire. On engine 11, we have 2 cross lays, which we'll show that when we go over to the school. We have 2 cross lays, which are comprised of 200 feet of 1 3/4 hose line. Currently, the nozzles, the fogger nozzles that are on there are set to 125 gallons per minute at 100 psi. Now, if we get on a fire scene and we have 2 interior firefighters that pull both of those cross lays and the pump operator is running them at 100 psi, we should be flowing enough water at 250 gallons per minute to efficiently and effectively extinguish that fire. But here's the kicker. This is where the time management and water management comes in. If I've got 2 firefighters at this rate, at 250 gallons a minute they're spraying, I've got 1,000 gallons on that truck. It takes me 4 minutes to completely empty that fire truck. 4 minutes ain't enough. Exactly. So that's where the water supply comes in. It brings in a lot of things. The importance of coupling your hoses tight enough to where they're not leaking. Trying not to waste water. You know, you want to do things like 1 nozzle tactic. When you first make entry into a house, you don't want to just blast in and start spraying water. 1, you could have an exceptionally hot environment. So one thing you want to do, if that door, once you've been told to go to avoid flashover, whatever, when you make entry into that room, you give it a quick blast of water at the ceiling. If that water immediately vaporizes, you know it is hot in there. Give it a minute. Stay outside, cool the room off. The whole idea with extinguishing fire is not necessarily putting it on the red stuff. Sometimes you just have to cool the entire environment that you're in. And you'll see some hose tactics where it's literally sweep the floor. And the whole idea is to cool the environment down. Because in an instant, if that room's hot enough and the water is vaporizing, you could have a flashover, which is there's enough fuel in the air and enough heat to have instant spontaneous combustion of the entire room. So if we use nozzle tactics proper, we can conserve water. So we have 4 minutes with the water that is on engine 11. But now let's think of the tanker. We have 4,000 gallons in that tanker, right? So that 4,000 gallons gives us 16 minutes, right? But you really don't have 16 minutes. And you really don't have 4,000 gallons. You have 3,000 gallons when he gets there at first. Because he's coming 5 minutes behind engine 11 because it's so slow. You never run an empty pumper, ever. Because if your tanker goes bad, if your draft messes up, anything can happen. You need to always have as much water on reserve inside your pump truck, your main attack truck, as possible. So the first thing that happens is when that tanker with 4,000 gallons gets there, he's now only got 3,000 because 1,000 of it has to go back to refill 11 and keep it full. So he really doesn't have 16 minutes. You've got 12 minutes of firefighting opportunity in that tanker. That's it. Now this is when it gets ever more complicated. What if you have an exposure over here? You have a barn, an outbuilding. What if you have a detached garage over here? Maybe 2 cars here. You have to keep those cool. So as a general rule of thumb, when you pull up on a fire scene, an effective incident commander, pump operator, he's going to see 2 exposures and know, okay, approximate square footage of this house, I need to add 25% water demand for every exposure I see. So let's say we have a garage over here. If we add 25% to that, we're actually at 325 gallons a minute by the time you figure out these 2 exposures that we actually need to be flowing. See how it compounds? Compounds quickly. An effective tanker operator, when he gets on scene, and that's something me and the chief back there have talked back and forth about, on tanker strategy of deploying tanks, which I'll show you that, deploying the tanks, emptying the tanker right now, and getting him back on the road to water supply. That way we have another 4,000 gallons in the tank, because a moving tanker is a working tanker. On the flip side of that, we need water right now, so if that tanker's connected to the engine right now, we've got an immediate water supply. So that's for incident commander to figure out. But let's say, for example, when that tanker operator, he pulls up, maybe we've got another crew, maybe chief back there, maybe he's running 12, he's the one putting the draft tanks down, he's doing all that, we got full draft tanks. Tanker's emptied into those draft tanks, that's 4,000 extra gallons we have there. But then an effective tanker operator is going to go, click, I'll let you know when I get back. And if he gets back in 5 to 7 minutes with a full truck, I know how many extra gallons per minute I can flow in order to fight that fire. It literally, in a rural environment with limited water supply, can come down to the minute, especially when you have the capacity to flow that much water through just 2 hand lines. Now, the other things we can do is deploy a master stream off the top. That's 500 gallons a minute. But then we also have a 2.5-inch line on the back that we could flow another 200 gallons per minute. Technically, we have a 1,500 gallon per minute pump on that truck, so we could flood the county if we really wanted to between all the trucks that we have. We have the capacity, with the way the truck is set up right now, in addition to the fast attack hose that's on the other side, we could easily, if we had the other shortage we have, which is manpower, we have enough people to pull both cross slays, manage the deck gun, pull the fast attack hose, all at the same time, plus the 2.5. We're looking at 2, 4, 9, 1,000, 1,175 gallons per minute of water we could easily flow out of that truck the way that it's connected right now.
If we had the manpower.
If we had the manpower and if we had the water supply. So when it comes down to it, effective management on the fire scene as an interior firefighter or tanker operator, he's run a pump, he's run the tank, chief back there, he's done it all. And in the chief's mind, he's doing exactly that. He's looking at how many firefighters he's got, how much water he needs to flow. He's looking at the number of exposures that you have, and all that stuff is clicking in your head of all at the same time on the fire scene.
If you're pumping the attack engine, so what we had up there, we had 2 engines. One was called an attack engine. That was engine 11. That's what was pulling the hose lines off. Engine 12 was called the dump site, because that's where the tankers were dumping their water. So we mutilated Hickman Rescue Squad for a tanker, Dixon EMA for a tanker, and our tank, and Sept Fire for an engine and manpower. So what we did with Sept engine, instead of blocking the roads, Sept knows that we've been working this out ever since we started doing it. Have you watched any of the series?
No.
Okay. So if you go on our Facebook page, Task Force Tips Nozzles did a series in Hickman County using our engine.
Oh, actually, we did watch that.
Called Rural Water Supply. Andy Sakata is the instructor, and he is also the owner of water things. Those guys can get water. They're phenomenal. You know, the engine 12 is rated to pump at 1,250 gallons per minute. We were pulling a draft. It's what's called a 3-2 draft. We had our suction hook on the front and on both sides, and I think they got it up to 1,700 gallons per minute, just from a from a pump. And but what Sept does, so the hydrants around here are not the greatest. You're just filling off of whatever GPMs they have. But what Sept does is when they drop their manpower off, we give them the closest hydrant. The engineer, the driver of that truck, will take it to that hydrant, and he will hook into that hydrant, and he will pump to the trucks. So now you're pumping 1,250 gallons per minute of water into these tankers. So now you're filling our tanker up. We did a rural water supply class one year, and we did what was called a heavy hook. Sept engine hooked 3 lines up to a hydrant at the school, and you could fill that 4,000 gallon tanker up in 2.5 minutes, which was phenomenal. The first time we actually put it in the real world was on fire down off of Highway 100, orange top hydrant, not a good hydrant. You know, I think they're 500 GPM.
Yeah, that's right. Top. Yes, sir.
The first time the tanker was filled took 15 minutes. Sept got there, they hooked 3 lines into that hydrant. And the second time our tanker, 4,000 gallon tanker, went and hooked it and filled up, it dropped it down to under 7 minutes. So you gotta think, I mean, that's an extra 4,000 gallons of water we just did. And that's what I try to tell people, you know, especially the officers, or not even the officers, it may be people during the day. Get those tankers rolling, because in ISO's mind, they rate, I have to look it up again, but I mean, that as far as they're concerned, tankers only do like 20 miles an hour. And anything over 12 miles doesn't count towards your ISO. Luckily we have Rescue Squad. They've got a station and a tanker in our district. Dixon EMA has got a tanker just across the county line on 46. Williamson County Rescue Squad has a station just off of Pinewood Road as soon as you cross into there. Fairview Fire, 12 miles is probably, all of those tankers just about encompass our entire district. So don't hesitate to call.
Right.
And Central does not count us as an ISO because of and they don't have a tanker. But man, that's a perfect opportunity to bring your farthest outlying engine, mutuate it with manpower, and then set that engine up at a hydrant and let them fill your tankers. Because once they got there and started filling the tank, we ran out of water a couple times on that fire up there.
Yeah, we did.
But once they got the fill site set up and the tankers got in a good rotation, the tankers were having to wait to dump because they were getting back so fast. And that leads into his water. That's how we did our water.
Yeah.
The tanker and the engine got there first. The tanker hooked into the engine and started pumping water. So now you got 5,000 gallons, which gives engine 12 time to come in, find a space to pull off, and set up the dump tanks. Because there's a lot of times before we started doing what's called a rural hitch, we would we would send both engines first and then the tankers third. Well, now you're just sending 2,000 gallons of water. You've got your guy in the second engine running around because he's got to hook up his engine to the other engine. Once he gets that and gets them water flowing, then he's got to come around and they got to start taking the dump tanks off. And then he's got to go and look and see how much water he's got. And then the tanker's showing up. And so now you're trying to get all that stuff up done. With the tanker and the engine going first, you've got a little bit of time. I'm not saying you can sit out there and lollygag, but you've got a little bit of, and then plus you got other tankers coming. So by the time you get it set up, say he's out of water, or he's almost out of water, and guess what? The rescue squad's showing up to fill your dump tank up. And then you've got 1,000 gallons of water plus what the rescue squad brought you that you can prime up, pull a drag, take the hose off the tanker, put it on your engine, and go. And then that tanker can leave. And then by then you got Fairview, you got Williamson County pulling up, you got Dixon EMA pulling up with their tanker. So that helps us out like that a little bit. You can actually go on YouTube, or you can watch the series on our Facebook page, and it shows a rural hitch. The first time I ever did it, I fell in love with it. I absolutely love the rural hitch. It's a great tool. It's it's good. It's what does the young kids say nowadays? The bee's knees?
The bee's knees. Yeah.
Not quite like that, but.
So hang on to it.